Okay, this is Unit 1, Music in the Industry. This exam is worth 50 marks. It's for 50 minutes and there are sections A, B and C. Today we're going to learn about the misconceptions of this exam, explain what the examiner is looking for in your answers, and to go through the topics that students found difficult when revising. So section A, what does it consist of? The first 5 questions are multiple choice, okay? And as you can see, here's an example of a multiple choice question which might be asked in the actual exam. It has 4 answers to pick from, and it's giving you really specific information. Which one, which is boldened, of the following is not, that's also boldened, a responsibility of the promoter, and it's really, really important that you guys read that question in order to make sure that you can get the right mark. Now, one of the questions that's been asked in a previous paper is to identify the organisation typically responsible for publicising live music events. Now, the correct answer is promotion company, and the most common incorrect response selected for this question was publishing company, okay? Another question asked to students was to identify the job role that acts as the creative manager during a recording session, with the correct response being music producer. Now, as you'll realise, everything that you are revising for section A of this exam, or section A, B and C, but section A in terms of your PLC, looks at the roles within the music industry. These are really, really, really easy 1-mark questions that you could get right if you know that role and responsibility within that music industry, okay? So these are your 1-mark questions that you should be able to get straight away. So, like I said here, these questions are testing your knowledge of the roles and responsibilities of a role in the music industry, and they're usually 1 or 2-mark questions, easy points to pick up. Now here's another example. Learners are asked to identify a job that arranges tours for an artist in the music industry. So I know you probably see it on here, but there are a couple of other answers that you could have. So the first one, the main one that I would always put down is tour manager, okay? That's the easiest one. So what is the job role that arranges tours for an artist in the music industry? Tour manager, okay? You could also have agent and promoter as well, because they work together. Credit was also awarded just for manager, okay? Because on its own, it's very common to be called just a manager within the music industry, and they sometimes reference it like that too, so that was a common answer given as well. Where learners provided incorrect responses, they gave venue manager. Now, a venue manager is not the correct answer, okay? They might be involved in booking the venue as part of the tour, but they would not book a tour for those artists. They're just dealing with their particular venue, okay? So that would not be a valid response. Here's another one. Focusing on the roles and responsibilities. 2 ways a songwriter would generate income. Correct answers could include royalties, payment from publishing, being commissioned by a record company or artist, and composing work for broadcasts such as films or advertising, okay? So, like I say, you have to pick 2, or you have to choose 2 or state 2 roles and responsibilities, how they would generate income. Some learners provided a response that was not very specific enough to be creditable. For instance, learners suggested write music or sell songs, but that simply writing music will not generate an income, okay? It's what they have to do with that music in order to generate an income. Section B. This moves on, and it always starts off with a brief, okay? So this is an example of a brief here. It's quite long, so there's a lot of information that you would need to take in. I would suggest that you underline the most important points within that brief, so you make sure you've really understood the brief. So I said here, read questions very carefully. Some students would this question. In section A, section B, you will also have one of these questions, okay? And it's basically like, can you match up the role to the responsibility? So some students, as it said, well, you can't actually see the question here, but it would say, match 1 role with 1 responsibility. Some students try to match as many as possible. It's because they didn't read the question. So that's a really common misconception of not reading that question carefully. So it's really important to pay attention to that, and important to make sure you understand the brief in section B. Health and safety questions. I know this was something that came up that some students were struggling with. So here's a health and safety question that the students were asked in one of their exams. Explain one task that Daniel should undertake before beginning a performance workshop. And there's a really good range of potential correct answers for this question. So setting up and testing the musical equipment required for the workshop, warming up and planning the session. Credit was also given to relevant suggestions that were feasible in the circumstances of the brief, so it's always being related back to the brief, okay? Such as making sure there was no trip hazard cables. More general health and safety suggestions, such as completing a risk assessment for the venue or getting insurance, were not considered correct responses in particular scope of the brief and in the question, okay? So it's all about being specific and relating back to that brief and what it's telling you in that, okay? Especially with section B, that's all what it's all about, relating back to the brief. Section C. You'll also have another brief that follows on in section C, but it usually includes questions based on another scenario. This year's section C was all about a team of volunteers planning a weekend music festival at the Seaside Resort. This is what our current Year 11s had in their January exam, okay? So what they needed to do was talk about and make sure they're concentrating on the actual scenario brief, okay? Now question 18 in the 2020 paper was on job roles. And they needed to provide 2 job roles from provided descriptions. So here's a description, but what is the job role? This is where this structure, music industry structure sheet, is so important, okay? I know that I've given it to you. I know that you have a copy on the OneDrive too. And that is really important that you can go through that, because that gives you all the roles, and then you'll be easily able to answer those questions. You will have some explain questions in your exam. Explain questions are usually worth 2 marks, okay? And past students really struggled with gaining those 2 marks because they did not justify their reasoning. They did not give some sort of conclusion or explanation or consequence of their first answer, okay? So in 2-mark explain questions, students gain the first mark for the correct answer to the question and the second mark for a valid explanation or consequence of the first answer. Okay, so it's basically about you explaining that first point, okay? Now here's an example, okay, this is asking for 2 ways an artist can make themselves more appealing to a record label, such as BGB Records. So you have to state what your answer is and then explain it, and that will give you 4 marks if you got that correct. Now there are explain questions in A, B and C sections, so we'll do some more work on how to actually answer explain questions, and I'll give you lots and lots of practice examples and practice questions for you to answer. Now, there are some 8-mark questions that are really, really important that you understand the structure to, and make sure that you are really working on your extended writing. Now, I've got some strategies in order to complete the long extended questions, but the main point really is to make sure that you provide a wide breadth of ideas in your response to the question, okay? Responses that scored 6 to 8 marks, which is great, discussed a wide range of issues in more depth, okay, relating the consequences of various situations to a range of outcomes. So here's one. This is your 8-mark question. It says, Adam and Les are considering options for the backing band. Option 1 is hiring an existing band, and option 2 is hiring each instrumentalist separately to form a new band. Evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of each option for Adam and Les. Okay, so it's really, really important that you're discussing a wide range of issues about that. Okay, so I would split your page into advantages and disadvantages, state those points and then explain them. I've got some top tips for you in order for you to answer this exam. Number 1, avoid naming a particular organisation when asked to identify an organisation. For instance, so a record company is a valid type of organisation, but Sony is just an example of an organisation, okay? And that would not be gained credit for, okay? This also applies for when you're asked about maybe a type of venue, okay? So a type of venue might be an arena, or a school hall, or a village hall, okay? Or a pub. But it wouldn't be, you wouldn't get any valid credit for saying the O2, okay? Or O2. You wouldn't give valid credit for naming our school as a type of venue, okay? Top tip 2. Continue to familiarise yourself with all of the job roles and their associated responsibilities found in the specification. Okay, they're all in your guides, they're all in your revision booklets. You just need to make sure you can revise all of them, and that you can verbally and actually write down what their role is and what their responsibility is. Okay, if you know all of them, you're going to do brilliantly. Okay, they are the only roles that will feature in the exam because they're the only ones in the specification, okay? So you should be very familiar with every job role and their relevant responsibilities. Top tip 3. So remember that on questions where boxes have been joined with a line, only one line must be drawn from each of the required boxes. That's what I spoke about just a bit earlier in a couple of slides. There will only ever be one correct answer for each box of the 2 boxes in the question. Okay, so drawing more than one line from a box automatically will get you 0 for that box. So make sure you're really, really careful with that. Top tip 4. Take care to plan your time effectively, particularly when answering those 2 longer 8-mark questions so that you can avoid running out of time. You want to give yourself the best opportunity to make sure that you can answer both those questions and get really high scores. So you've got to make sure that you're able to manage your time. Now there are 3 blank pages in your actual exam booklet to give you a chance to be able to write some really extended answers, okay? So if you need more room, it's there. However, you still need to be careful to pace yourselves and try not to fill all 3 boxes if you know you don't have time to do that. Learners should also aim to spend equal time on each of the longer questions and not write so much for one question than when you may run out of time for, so like I explained before, okay? Top tip 5. Be sure to read each question carefully and make sure you understand what is being asked of you, because this is where misinterpretations can happen, and that can lead to giving irrelevant or uncredit-worthy answers. Okay, all words in the questions are likely to be relevant, and most of them, the most important parts usually will be bold. Okay, so they will highlight what the important parts of that question are. But you've just got to read carefully. Top tip 6. Try to provide a detailed, specific response. Okay. That is, for example, for your explain questions and also for those 8-mark extended writing questions. Vague answers are much less likely to gain you credit. Okay. Try to provide as much music industry related information as you can in your answer, okay? And that's where those structure sheets come in again, the interrelated parts and different roles of the music industry. That will help you. So for instance, sell music is too general in a paper, okay, to be creditable. It does not provide enough detail to answer the question. However, sell a song to a record company is more detailed and therefore is a creditable example. Top tip 7. Try to identify and explain as many different relevant points as you are able to in the 8-mark extended response question, okay? If you know there's 8 marks available, you really want to be trying to get as many points as you can included within that answer, and then explaining them, okay? Giving them some sort of analysis, and really giving them giving them an evaluation. Try to mention a range of different points rather than simply just repeating the same point over and over again. It's like some students really like their answer and they think it's like if they write it again they're going to get another point for it. They're not, okay? That's a great answer. You've just completed that, but you now need to move on to another point in order to score more points, okay? Top tip 8, this is the last top tip that I'm giving you. Take care over your handwriting. I know that some students don't have always the neatest of handwriting, but in your exams it's so important, okay? Examiners can't mark anything that they cannot read. So you need to make sure you need to attempt to write as clearly as you can, and always write in black ink as well. All right. Now, I know that employment was something that came up as some people were having difficulty with when revising. So I'm going to try and explain this a little bit further. It's quite simple. Okay, employment is seen as 3 different types. Okay, full-time, part-time, and freelance. All right, and there's a couple of differences between those 3 types of employment. So full-time is standard. Okay, standard is 37 to 40 hours a week. All right, it has a contract that may include a pension and paid holidays and sick time. They are employed by an organisation, and it will usually be a long-term contract. Okay, so that's full-time employment. Part-time employment are where hours vary from working 1 day to 4 days a week. Contracts may include pensions, paid holidays and sick time. And employed, they'll be definitely employed by an organisation, and that will usually be long-term as well. Okay, and then we've got freelance. All right, self-employed and freelancers are self-employed and not committed to a particular employer for a long-term thing. Okay, and they're not in a contract or not in a long-term contract. It would just be short-term contracts that they're given to carry out that specific role within their company. Okay, so up here I've got a few different roles that you might want to write down and see if you, or pause the video, see if you could allocate to the different employment types, so full-time, part-time and freelance. And then it's really important to state why. Why is it good that that role is linked to that type of employment? So, you know, could a session musician be full-time, part-time or freelance? And why is it important that they are a specific type? What would it help with? Okay, so really try and answer that question and use these roles above here. So venue manager, session musician, studio manager, mastering engineer, live sound technician, sound engineer, roadie, artist manager and record producer. Have a think about what they might be linked to in terms of employment. Next one's A&R. Okay, A&R stands for artists and repertoire. Okay, the main roles of someone that's taken on a role of an A&R, or artist and repertoire, is finding and spotting the talent. So they'll go to live gigs, okay, open mic nights, small performances to find new talent. Okay, and they will be involved in signing the artist. If they like them and they think that they're right for their company, then they will sign that artist and also oversee the whole process of them actually getting a record contract. Okay, so record contract and also recording their own music and going through the whole production, the whole process of recording that music and actually getting it even delivered to the stores. So they do go through the whole process. They also assist with marketing and promotion, and they also help find appropriate songs for the artists. Okay, now A&R really have to interrelate with other roles. Okay, and here's 3 main ones that they'll interrelate with. Record producer, they work with the record producer during the recording process to make sure that the songs that are produced are of the highest quality. Okay, artistic management, they work with the artistic manager to finalise contracts and work as a team to develop the artists, to make them grow, you know, maybe style them a different way, you know, to make them be attracted to a different audience, or to make them look a certain way so then they sell more records, really, so they have a bigger fan base. Musicians, this is the last one that I'm going to talk about, and they're interrelating. Musicians, A&R obviously will have to work with musicians because they find them, they spot that talent, they sign them, they work with the musicians to develop their own practice and to try out different songs to check the appropriateness of if that would fit their style. Okay, so that's what an A&R role is. Now we've got the PLC. Okay, so this is the PLC that I spoke about in the last video, and these are the things that I would really need you to do in order to be ready to take your music exam. This exam will take place in January. Okay, so task 1 It's just going through the different types of organisation that make up the music industry, okay? These are all in your workbook, all in your revision guides. Task 2, understand job roles in the music industry, in your workbook again. Task 3, focus on that music structure sheet, which I linked to in one of the slides. And task 4, complete a mock exam. I haven't had yet any mock exam completed answers and scores given to me yet, so it's really important that you do that so we can then start tailoring these videos and your revision to your weaknesses, to the parts that we need to work on, okay? So once you've completed your mock exam, please send me through your scores, please send me through the parts that you think you found difficult, and we can work on them together. Thank you.